So welcome back to cell signalling. We're going to be talking about types of signalling today. So your basics of signalling are you've got two types, which is your local, which occurs with direct contact basically between cells using cytokines, which are a type of chemical messenger. And then you have long distance, which is the use of hormones. So it's signalling between cells over a longer distance, such as like from your pituitary gland to your ovaries and such. But to be more specific, there are 4 types within this. First off, you've got endocrine, which is your hormone signalling, so over long distances using hormones secreted into the bloodstream. You've got paracrine, which utilises local mediators such as a cell releasing cytokines, which then bind to the receptor on local cells, causing a signal. You've got then neural, which uses neurons, so there's a sort of longer distance, but not always a longer distance, transmission of an electrical impulse, which diffuses across the membrane at the dendrites to the receptor cell and binds to the receptor and causes change that way. So not long distance, but a bit longer distance. And then you've got contact dependent, which is when there's a membrane bound signal molecule on one of the cells that binds to a receptor on the opposite cell, so they sort of have to be very, like almost hugging or kissing to cause a signal to be transponded. So you may have heard me mention the term ligand a couple of times. This is basically just a fancy word for an extracellular trigger. So these can be hormones, peptides or antigens, and they act as a first messenger. These are the ones that bind to a receptor to cause the intracellular change. This change can be the release of a secondary messenger, which then can bind to another one and then cause the release of another, and so on and so forth, like a domino effect or a cascade. Another term you may hear me using is a steroid. These bind intracellularly instead, so you've got things such as testosterone, which would be an example of one. They bind inside the cell. So here's a little diagram that I'm actually really proud of, so hopefully it excuses my terrible handwriting of this video. So you've got your steroid, which is your intracellular ligand outside the cell. This diffuses or moves into the cell through transport or carrier proteins. It can bind to a free-floating receptor that's in the cytosol. This binds and forms a hormone receptor complex, which can move through a nuclear pore into the nucleus. This hormone receptor complex can stimulate transcription of DNA to form messenger RNA. This can be translated at the ribosomes into a new protein. So basically, the hormone receptor complex is a transcription factor.